The year was 2147, and humanity had finally crossed the threshold of its cosmic solitude. The Vailith arrived not with warships or weapons, but with a shimmering vessel that hovered silently above Earth's atmosphere like a jewel suspended in the void. Their arrival sparked both awe and fear as people around the globe gathered to watch news broadcasts of the event unfold. For decades, humanity had dreamt of meeting intelligent life beyond their own. But now that it had happened, no one knew what to expect. Dr. Elias Kane stood at the edge of a crowded observation deck inside the United Nations Space Diplomacy Center. His heart raced as he watched holographic screens displaying real-time footage of the alien craft descending toward Earth. It wasn't just any ship. It pulsed faintly with light, almost alive, its surface shifting colors like liquid crystal under sunlight. This was history in motion, and Elias couldn't believe he'd been chosen for this moment. Elias was a linguist by trade, specializing in xenolinguistics, the study of alien languages, and xenobiology, focusing on how biology shaped communication across species. He had spent years preparing for first contact scenarios, poring over theoretical models and simulated exercises. But nothing could prepare him for the reality of standing face-to-face with an actual extraterrestrial being. When the Vailith delegation disembarked from their craft, they moved with fluid grace, their elongated limbs gliding effortlessly despite gravity differences. Their skin shimmered faintly, glowing with soft hues that shifted depending on their mood, or so scientists would later theorize. Among them walked Syra, the lead diplomat designated to represent her people. She stood slightly taller than the others, her presence commanding yet serene. Her eyes, large and luminous, seemed to hold galaxies within them. As introductions began, Elias found himself drawn to her immediately, not just because she was fascinatingly alien, but because there was something deeply human about her gaze. When she spoke through a translator device strapped to her wrist, her voice carried a melodic quality, each syllable resonating like music. "We come seeking understanding," she said simply, her words translated into clear English, "and perhaps unity." Over the next few days, Elias worked tirelessly alongside other experts to decode the nuances of the Vailith language. Unlike humans, who relied heavily on vocal tones and facial expressions, the Vailith communicated using a combination of bioluminescent signals, subtle body movements, and intricate sound patterns. It was a complex puzzle, but Elias thrived under pressure. Every breakthrough brought him closer to Syra, and every shared glance between them felt electric. One evening, after hours of intense discussion, Elias hesitated before asking the question that had lingered in his mind since their first meeting. "Do you feel anything for us?" he asked cautiously, unsure if the concept of emotion even existed in her culture. Syra tilted her head, her glow flickering briefly, an expression of confusion, maybe curiosity. Then, without answering, she turned away, leaving Elias more intrigued than ever. That night, lying awake in his quarters, Elias replayed their interactions in his mind. Was it possible for someone so different to connect with him emotionally? Or was he projecting his own desires onto her enigmatic demeanor? Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. Syra held answers Elias was determined to uncover. News of the mind link spread faster than either Elias or Syra could have anticipated. What began as a private experiment between two individuals quickly became public knowledge, thanks to security leaks within the diplomatic compound. Within hours, reports flooded Earth's media outlets and reached the Vailith Council aboard their orbiting ship. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On Earth, governments and citizens alike were divided. Some hailed the mind link as a groundbreaking step toward understanding the Vailith, evidence that coexistence was possible. Others saw it as reckless endangerment, accusing Elias of jeopardizing humanity's safety for personal gain. Protesters gathered outside the United Nations Space Diplomacy Center, holding signs that read *No experiments, with aliens and *Protect humanity first*. Meanwhile, the Vailith response was even more severe. Their council convened an emergency session, condemning Syra's actions as a betrayal of her people's principles. Emotions, they argued, were not meant to be shared, especially not with humans, whose volatile nature made them unpredictable allies at best. They demanded her immediate recall to the homeworld, threatening to sever all diplomatic ties if she remained on Earth. Caught in the crossfire, Elias and Silra found themselves under intense scrutiny. Every movement they made was monitored, every word scrutinized. Despite the growing pressure, neither backed down. Instead, they doubled their efforts to prove that the mind link had been worthwhile, that bridging the emotional gap between their species was not only possible but necessary. One evening, as they sat together in a secure chamber deep within the compound, Syra turned to Elias with a look of quiet resolve. "They will not stop until we are separated," she said, her glow flickering faintly. "If I return home, I will never see you again. My people do not forgive easily." Elias clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "And if you stay, what then? You'll become an outcast among your own kind, risking everything for what? For me." Syra's luminous eyes softened, her glow shifting to a pale lavender. "Not just for you," she replied gently. "For both our peoples. If we can show them that emotions are not weapons, but tools for connection, then maybe we can prevent another disaster like the one my world endured." Her words struck a chord in Elias, reigniting his determination. Together, they devised a plan to present their case directly to both sides. Using recordings from the mind link, they created a holographic presentation showcasing the shared experiences they had exchanged. It wasn't just data. It was raw emotion, captured in vivid detail. Laughter, tears, pain, joy, all laid bare for anyone willing to witness. The presentation was scheduled for the next day, broadcast live across Earth, and transmitted to the Valeth Council. As they prepared, tensions reached a boiling point. Extremist factions on both sides attempted to sabotage the event, planting false rumors and launching cyber attacks aimed at disrupting the broadcast. Security teams worked tirelessly to ensure the proceedings would go ahead as planned. When the moment finally arrived, Elias and Silra stood side by side before a global audience. Cameras captured every nuance, their nervous glances, their unspoken bond. As the holograms played, showing glimpses of their intertwined memories, the room fell silent. Even skeptics couldn't deny the power of what they were witnessing. When the presentation ended, Syra stepped forward, addressing both humans and Valeth simultaneously. Closing her eyes, she spoke softly but firmly. "I have seen your fears, your hopes, your dreams. And now, I ask you, can we truly build a future together without understanding each other's hearts?" Her question hung in the air, unanswered but undeniable. Whatever happened next, Elias knew one thing for certain. Their fight was far from over, but neither was their hope. The aftermath of Syra's speech was a storm of reactions, both on Earth and among the Valeth. Some were moved by her words, seeing in them a chance for unity. Others remained entrenched in fear and distrust. The divide between factions grew wider, with extremists on both sides escalating their hostility. Threats poured in. Cyber attacks crippled communication systems, protests turned violent, and rumors swirled that the Valeth Council was preparing to abandon diplomacy entirely. Elias and Silra found themselves at the center of this chaos, their every move scrutinized. Security tightened around them, but even fortified walls couldn't shield them from the weight of what was at stake. Late one night, as they sat together in a dimly lit conference room, exhaustion etched into their faces, Elias finally broke the silence. "What happens if we lose?" he asked quietly, his voice heavy with worry. "If they force you to leave, or worse?" Syra looked at him, her glowing skin shifting to a soft amber, the color of resolve. "Then I will have no choice but to go," she replied, though her tone betrayed the pain behind her words. "But before I do, I want you to know something." She paused, taking a deep breath. You've shown me what it means to feel alive, not just exist. If I must sacrifice myself for peace, then so be it. But don't let my people, or yours, turn away from what we've started." Her determination stirred something deep within Elias. He realized then that their bond wasn't just about love, it was about hope. Hope that two vastly different species could find common ground. And if hope required sacrifice, he was ready to give everything he had. Together, they crafted a final plea. Using the recordings from the Mind Link, they prepared a comprehensive report detailing how emotional understanding could strengthen interstellar relations. They highlighted moments of shared vulnerability, showing how empathy bridged gaps logic alone could not. It was risky. They knew some would see it as an affront, but they also knew it might be their only chance. When the day came to present their case, Elias and Silra faced a joint assembly of Earth's leaders and the Valeth Council via holographic transmission. The tension in the room was palpable, each side bristling with suspicion. As Elias spoke first, explaining the science behind the Mind Link and its implications, murmurs rippled through the crowd. When Silra took the floor, her presence commanded attention. Closing her eyes briefly, she addressed the assembly directly. "We are not so different," she began, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Both our peoples have suffered because of misunderstandings. My world nearly destroyed itself trying to suppress emotions, while yours struggles under their weight. Perhaps the answer lies somewhere in between, not rejecting emotions, but learning to guide them." She opened her eyes, her glow pulsing softly. "I ask you now, is it worth severing ties over fear? Or can we take this step together? To trust, to learn, and yes, to feel." Her words resonated deeply, sparking heated debates among delegates. While many remained unconvinced, a small but growing faction began advocating for compromise. A tentative agreement emerged, a joint research initiative aimed at exploring the intersection of emotion and reason. Though far from perfect, it signaled progress, a fragile foundation upon which to build. As the session concluded, Silra turned to Elias, her expression unreadable. "They'll recall me soon," she said softly. "But I won't leave without making sure this work continues." Elias reached out, placing his hand gently on hers. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together," he promised, "even if they try to tear us apart." For the first time in days, Silra's glow brightened, a faint smile playing on her lips. Their fight wasn't over, but neither was their hope. Days turned into weeks as Elias and Silra worked side by side, their collaboration becoming the cornerstone of Earth's efforts to understand the Valeth. Each session was a delicate dance of discovery, Elias deciphering their language while Silra patiently explained her people's customs, history, and philosophy. The more they interacted, the more Elias noticed subtle changes in her demeanor. Her bioluminescent glow, once steady and neutral, began to shift unpredictably during their conversations. Sometimes it softened to a warm amber when she listened intently. Other times, it flared briefly to a cool blue when topics grew tense. Despite these small breakthroughs, there remained an unspoken barrier between them, a question that hung heavy in the air, but never fully addressed. Elias couldn't shake the feeling that something about Silra was just out of reach, like trying to grasp smoke with his bare hands. She was polite yet distant, answering every inquiry with precision, but rarely offering more than what was asked. It frustrated him, not because he doubted her sincerity, but because he sensed she was holding back. One evening, after another long day of work, Elias decided to take a risk. They were seated in a quiet observation lounge overlooking Earth's sprawling cityscape below. The room was bathed in the golden hues of sunset, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Silra sat cross-legged on a cushioned chair, her glowing skin reflecting off the glass walls. For a moment, Elias simply watched her, marveling at how alien yet strangely familiar she seemed. "Silra," he began hesitantly, breaking the comfortable silence. "I've been wondering, do you feel anything for me? Or for humans, I mean." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her luminous eyes narrowing as though processing his words. Then her glow dimmed, shifting to a muted silver, a color Elias hadn't seen before. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weightiness that made him lean forward unconsciously. "What do you mean by feel?" she asked, her translator device rendering her tone perfectly flat. "Your species places great importance on emotions, yet my people have evolved beyond such distractions." Her choice of words stung, though Elias tried not to show it. "Distractions," he echoed, his brow furrowing. "You make it sound like emotions are useless. But isn't connection, understanding each other, important too?" Syra paused again, her glowing skin flickering faintly. This time, it shifted to a pale green, which Elias had come to associate with uncertainty. "Connection is necessary for survival," she admitted slowly. "But emotion clouds judgment. It leads to chaos." Elias felt a pang of frustration mixed with curiosity. He leaned closer, his voice softening. "Not all emotions lead to chaos. Some bring clarity. Some heal." He hesitated, then added, almost impulsively, "Do you love me because I'm human?" The room fell silent. Syra froze, her glow pulsing erratically for a brief moment before stabilizing into a deep indigo. She closed her eyes, as if shielding herself from the intensity of the question. When she opened them again, her expression, if it could even be called that, was unreadable. "Love," she murmured, testing the word as though it were foreign on her tongue. "Love is complicated." And with that, she stood abruptly, her movements fluid yet deliberate. Without another word, she exited the room, leaving Elias alone with his thoughts. He stared after her, his mind racing. What had he expected? An answer? A revelation? All he knew was that her reaction told him far more than any explanation ever could, that beneath her calm exterior lay depths he had only begun to glimpse. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange, Elias realized one thing. Whatever secrets Syra carried, they were tied to the very concept of love itself, and uncovering those secrets might change everything, for both of them. For days after their conversation about love, Syra seemed distant. She attended meetings and diplomatic sessions with her usual precision, but there was a new guardedness to her demeanor, a subtle withdrawal that even her glowing skin couldn't hide. Her bioluminescence remained muted, often flickering between shades of gray and pale blue, as if reflecting an inner turmoil she refused to share. Elias noticed the change immediately. He tried to approach her several times, hoping to bridge the growing gap between them, but each attempt ended in polite yet firm deflections. It wasn't until the third day that Syra finally broke her silence, not in response to his questions, but because something within her needed release. They were alone in the observation lounge again, this time under the artificial glow of Earth's orbital lights. The view outside was breathtaking. Continents draped in darkness, cities sparkling like constellations against the night. Syra stood by the window, her hands clasped behind her back, her posture rigid yet somehow fragile. Elias hesitated before speaking, unsure if he should intrude on her quiet contemplation. "You've asked me about emotions," she began suddenly, her voice soft but steady. "Perhaps it is time I told you why my people avoid them." Elias froze, surprised by her willingness to open up. He nodded slowly, encouraging her to continue. Syra turned to face him, her luminous eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Centuries ago," she explained, "my people faced extinction. Our world was dying, resources depleted, ecosystems collapsing. Survival required unity, logic, and sacrifice. Emotions were disruptive. They caused division, conflict, and irrational decisions. So we evolved, or rather, we forced ourselves to evolve. We suppressed emotion, prioritizing reason above all else." Her glow shifted to a deep crimson, a color Elias hadn't seen before. "But not everyone agreed," she continued, her voice tinged with sorrow. Some believed emotions could coexist with logic, that they might even strengthen us. A group of scientists and philosophers proposed an experiment, an attempt to reintegrate emotion into our society through controlled exposure. She paused, her gaze dropping to the floor. When she spoke again, her tone was heavy with regret. The experiment failed. Terribly. Emotions overwhelmed those involved, leading to violence, betrayal, and chaos. Thousands died. Entire cities were destroyed. Afterward, any mention of emotion became taboo. Those who survived the experiment were exiled, or worse. Elias listened in stunned silence, his heart aching for the weight of her words. He realized now why Sci-Fi had been so reluctant to discuss love. It wasn't just unfamiliar, it was dangerous. To her, emotions weren't just distractions, they were weapons capable of tearing apart entire civilizations. "And you?" he asked gently, breaking the silence. "Were you part of this experiment?" Sci-Fi hesitated, her glow flickering faintly. Then, with a resigned sigh, she nodded. "I was young then, eager to prove myself. I thought I could help bridge the divide between emotion and logic. But when the chaos erupted, I couldn't stop it. I failed." Elias felt a lump rise in his throat. He wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but he knew better than to invade her space. Instead, he simply said, "You're not responsible for what happened, Sci-Fi. You were trying to make things better." She looked at him then, her glowing skin softening to a pale lavender. For the first time, Elias saw vulnerability in her, a crack in the armor she'd worn for so long. "Perhaps," she whispered, "but the scars remain. And now, being here with you, hearing your questions, feeling your curiosity, it stirs things I thought were buried." As the silence stretched between them, Elias understood one thing clearly. Sci-Fi's inability to answer his question about love wasn't because she didn't care. It was because loving, or even understanding love, meant confronting a past she'd spent centuries trying to forget. Months passed after the joint assembly, and though tensions between Earth and the Veilith remained high, the fragile agreement held firm. The research initiative became a beacon of hope, drawing scientists, diplomats, and thinkers from both species to collaborate in understanding emotions, not as weaknesses or dangers, but as tools for connection. Sci-Fi stayed on Earth longer than expected, her recall postponed repeatedly by the Veilith Council due to the growing success of the program. Yet, she knew her time was limited. Elias watched as Sci-Fi took on a new role, guiding young researchers and ambassadors through the complexities of emotional exchange. She taught them how to interpret bioluminescent signals alongside human expressions, creating a hybrid language that bridged their differences. Her presence inspired awe and respect, not just because she was alien, but because of the vulnerability she had embraced despite her fears. Slowly, trust began to take root where there had once been only suspicion. One evening, as they walked together under the stars outside the research facility, Elias broke the comfortable silence. "Do you ever regret staying?" he asked softly, his hands shoved into his pockets against the cool night air. Sci-Fi tilted her head, her glow shifting to a soft lavender. "Regret is a strange concept," she replied thoughtfully. "But no, I don't regret it. Even if my people disown me, even if this ends poorly, I've learned more here than I ever could have imagined." Elias smiled faintly, his heart swelling with gratitude and sadness. He knew what was coming. The Veilith Council had sent final orders. Sci-Fi would return home within weeks, her mission deemed complete. They hadn't outright condemned her actions, but exile loomed heavily over her future. "Will you be okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. For a moment, her glowing skin flickered erratically, amber, green, then pale blue, as though struggling to contain everything she felt. Finally, she closed her eyes and exhaled slowly. "I will be," she said quietly, "because of you." The words hung between them like stardust, shimmering with unspoken meaning. Elias reached out hesitantly, brushing his fingers against hers. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. Instead, she intertwined their hands, her touch warm despite her cool exterior. "You asked me once," she continued, opening her eyes to meet his gaze, "if I love you because you're human. The truth is," her voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on, "I love you because you showed me how to feel alive, not despite your humanity, but because of it. You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever: hope." Tears welled up in Elias's eyes as he pulled her into an embrace, holding her tightly as though afraid she might vanish. In that moment, none of the barriers between them mattered, neither biology, nor culture, nor fear. All that existed was the warmth of their shared connection. When Syra eventually departed, she left behind a legacy. The research initiative thrived, fostering deeper understanding between humans and Velith. And though Elias missed her every day, he found solace in knowing she carried a piece of him, and humanity, with her. Years later, as Elias stood watching a new generation of diplomats work side by side, he often thought back to their last conversation. Love, he realized, wasn't about sameness. It was about finding beauty in difference. And perhaps someday, love would bridge galaxies too. The days that followed Syra's revelation were filled with a quiet tension. Elias couldn't stop thinking about her story, the failed experiment, the scars she carried, and the walls she had built around herself to keep emotions at bay. He knew now why she hesitated when he brought up love. It wasn't indifference or disinterest. It was fear. Fear of what emotions might do to her, to those around her, and perhaps even to their fragile alliance. But Elias also believed in the power of connection. If Syra could understand human emotions, not just intellectually but viscerally, then maybe she wouldn't see them as dangerous anymore. Maybe she'd realize they weren't something to be feared but embraced. That belief sparked an idea so bold it made his pulse quicken every time he thought about it. One evening, after another long day of diplomatic sessions, Elias approached Syra in the observation lounge where they often met. She stood by the window, gazing out at Earth's swirling clouds below, her glow steady but subdued. Elias took a deep breath before speaking. "Syra," he began, his voice calm but firm, "I want to show you something." She turned to face him, her luminous eyes narrowing slightly in curiosity. "Show me what?" "A memory," he replied. "Your people communicate through light and sound, right? Well, humans have technology too. Neural interfaces that can share experiences directly from one mind to another. It's risky, I know, but I think it could help you understand us better. Understand me better." Syra stiffened, her glow flickering briefly to an anxious shade of blue. "You propose linking our minds?" she asked, her tone wary. "That is unprecedented. Dangerous, even." "I know," Elias admitted, stepping closer. "But isn't that what diplomacy is all about? Taking risks to build trust. I'm not asking you to embrace emotions overnight. I'm asking you to experience them firsthand. Just once. Let me show you what love feels like." For a moment, Syra didn't respond. Her glowing skin shifted through several colors. Blue, green, then a faint lavender, as if her thoughts were racing. Finally, she sighed softly, her shoulders relaxing. "Very well," she said quietly. "If this will help bridge the gap between us, I will agree. But know this, if harm comes to either of us, the consequences will be severe." Elias nodded, relief washing over him. Together, they prepared for the procedure, donning neural interface headsets connected to a secure system designed to facilitate the mind link. As technicians monitored their vitals, Elias reached out and placed his hand gently on Syra's arm, a gesture meant to reassure her. To his surprise, she didn't pull away. When the link activated, Elias felt a jolt of energy surge through him. Suddenly, he wasn't just himself anymore. He was part of something greater, a shared consciousness where memories and emotions flowed freely. Through his eyes, Syra saw flashes of his childhood. playing in the rain, laughing with friends, feeling the warmth of his mother's embrace. She experienced moments of heartbreak too, the death of loved ones, failures, loneliness. And yet, through it all, there was resilience, hope. In return, Elias glimpsed fragments of Syra's world, sterile Velith cities bathed in cold light, the haunting aftermath of the emotional experiment, and the isolation she endured as an outsider among her own kind. He felt her pain, her longing, and her quiet determination to find meaning beyond logic. When the link ended, both of them slumped back into their chairs, breathless and overwhelmed. Syra's glow pulsed erratically, shifting through colors too quickly to decipher. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Syra whispered, her voice trembling slightly, "I see now why humans cling so tightly to love. It is beautiful and terrifying." Elias smiled faintly, knowing they had crossed a threshold together. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side.